So it's February and it's time to start thinking ahead for the next cycling touring season. And one of my investments this year is one of those electronic bicycle pumps. If I want to pump the bicycle up at home, I have a lovely foot pump, does a great job of it. Totally recommend one of these, makes life much easier. On the road, it's a little bit different because you're trying to save weight all the time and bulk. And I had I've had two in fact, mini hand pumps, but not only are those quite a lot of effort to actually reinflate a tire if you do get a puncture, and you tend to be really tired in that circumstance and not want to put effort into things, but they're also relatively bulky and heavy. So I thought, I've been seeing ads online for these electronic pumps, and I thought, why not? So it's just arrived in the post, just opening it up to have a look. I'm not very good at opening boxes, I always have a bit of a fight with them. Okay, that must be a holder first. Conversion nozzle coming out of the bag. USB cable, of course, for charging it. And then the pump itself, which as you can see is very, very small. And in some sort of rubber coating. I'm guessing that's to protect it from getting whacked. So the main argument you see against these is that they don't hold that much of a charge. So this is good for two kind of standard road bike tires. So probably it's going to struggle doing more than one inflation of the tires I use for touring on, which are slightly wider, they're 28 rather than a kind of 22 or 25 mil tire. But that's okay because I use puncture resistant tires anyway, so it's very unusual when I get a puncture. It doesn't happen very often. In fact, I've only had one in 20,000 kilometers. So I'm not expecting to use this very much. And I always, because I'm cycling an electric bike anyway, but more to the point because I'm carrying all the camera gear and all that camera gear runs off batteries. I'm well used to carrying a USB charger so I can recharge those batteries, and the comparatively tiny battery on this isn't going to be a big deal. Always a good idea to start off by RTFMing, reading the manual. And so from that, I now know that this attachment is if you have what they call resin valves. I'm guessing they mean valves where you're running tubeless and sealants, and that's needed because basically the pump in operation, this bit gets quite hot and it could melt or warp the resin part of the valve. And then the second thing is the little plastic bag which contains the USB charging cable, also contains what you need to adapt for your valve type. So it comes set up for a Presta valve, but I don't have a Presta valve. I have the Schneider valves, I think they're pronounced, which are basically the sort of valves you get in cars as well, and that you can use the car air pumps to reinflate. So you can convert from one to the other thanks to the other three pieces of this bag. So the first thing you do is you remove the Presta connection and put that to one side. And you pop these out. There are three pieces and they're pretty small. So the smallest is this tiny bit of metal which goes in first. There's a little hole that fits into. Then there is a little connector and you put that in with the larger hole of the two facing outwards. And then next you have the valve connector, which is slightly different from the Presta one, slightly different, and that screws in. And once you've done all three of those, you're then set up for your tire inflation. In practice, I'd obviously not be bringing these bits on the road with me because I only have one valve type on the road. So I would set this up, and then the converter can stay in its box at home while I actually travel. Just let's throw this on a scale for a second. So that weight's coming in at about 130 grams, so very light. Very small, will fit in my kit bag relatively easily. So there's a button on the back, we push that and it goes green. Now push twice within 3 seconds and it starts inflating. You can feel the breeze. Push once more and it goes off. There's a USB-C charging port down here, so handy USB-C connector. I'm trying to get all my devices onto USB-C so I don't have to carry loads of cables around, because I've had at least one trip where I actually didn't pack the cable I thought I had packed, and as a result was unable to recharge my phone from an overnight camp, and I was left trying to navigate to the nearest town with 10% battery charge. Fortunately found a shop on the way and they enabled me to get enough of a charge to get onto the canal, and I could follow the canal back to Dublin. But generally you don't want to have that confusion. Much simpler if everything you have is just USB-C. So USB-C also has the advantage that it tends to be faster charging. According to the manual here, that will charge in about 25 minutes. It says it will give you about 200 seconds worth of pumping time in that. And as far as I can make out, that should be enough to inflate 2 of my tires to, what does it say here, 35 psi, or 1 to about 50. I don't know what I normally run them on, so that would certainly be enough to get me to the nearest garage, however, if I wanted to inflate them harder. Again, recharges in 25 minutes. It depends what the ampage is in that recharge. It's probably not very high though, so the odds are that means that recharging it from a power bank would not take much more than 25 minutes. So in other words, if you need more than one charge worth of air, you're not going to be stuck that long on your recharge. But anyway, let's go test it out. Oh, actually, before we test it out, one last thing is, it says because of the heat generated, don't remove this silicone coating. When I got it and I took it out of the packing, I was going, it's kind of the coating for. I presumed it was actually to prevent it being damaged if you drop it, but it's not. It's actually so it doesn't conduct heat. You don't accidentally burn yourself off it. That's quite an important thing. And the last important thing is it says you should fully charge it with the USB before you use it. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to do that full charge now. Okay, so I've fully recharged it. I did that actually very quickly. It only took a few minutes. And now actually I can let the air out this way, can't I? So this time we're going flat. Okay, so now I have an entirely uninflated tire, and let's turn it on and reinflate. Quite a sound, and yeah, that's fine. In fact, that would be my normal full inflation, and let's see how much longer it will actually run for. That's pretty impressive. So that's kept going for another 2 minutes. I'm going to turn it off and let it cool down a bit. It's not that hot, but that would seem to be better than what the specs say. The specs say 200 seconds. I guess that was 120 seconds. So if I had it running for 80 while it was inflating the tire, that would mean I would easily get 2 tires and a little bit out of it. But we'll check. We'll let this run again in a second and see where we get to. This is so straightforward, it would mean I'll do a much better job of actually keeping the air in my tires topped up. I often let them get a bit too soft. Anyway, let's give it some more time. Okay, so that's another 90 seconds. So 90 seconds plus 120 seconds is 210 seconds, and that's on top of inflating an entire tire. So this is one of those welcome products where the battery is actually underestimated rather than overestimated on it. It would look to me like I'd get both tires up and still have a fair bit of push left over. Now, the both tires thing is useful because sometimes you hit a disastrous patch of glass or something and you end up with more than one puncture. So having enough power in one of these to keep going is a bit longer. I'm going to re-weigh it. Yeah, so it's interesting. The specs say it weighs 90 grams, but again, I'm getting about 120, 130 grams on the weight of it. I wonder if it was weighed without the silicone liner and maybe with the more minimalist valve connection. Anyway, so it looks pretty good to me. I just randomly bought this online because it was produced. I wasn't paying attention to brands, but it's a Cycplus AS2 mini bicycle tire inflator. As usual, no sponsorship here. This isn't a product placement. I paid for it with my own hard cash and I've no contact whatsoever with the manufacturers. I wanted to test out if this would work for me for cycle touring, and I think the answer is definitely yes, it would. So not looking forward to the next puncture, but this could make it a little bit less painful. So I then ran it all the way to the battery going flat, and that in total took 4 minutes 30 seconds, and add to that the 1 minute 30 seconds involved in inflating that first tire. So in other words, although the packaging says it's good for 200 seconds, which is 3 minutes, I got about twice that out of it. So that first tire took 90 seconds. That would also suggest it could inflate as many as 4 tires. Now, as I said, I think towards the end, when I was running it flat, it sounded like it was being less powerful. So I suspected 4 tires wouldn't be realistic. Probably around 3 though, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, I would say I am pretty happy with purchase. This is obviously a quick review I've done on receipt of it. I will do another one once I've actually used it and found out how well it works in practice. My fellow cyclist in the house was being very critical about it. He was going, "Oh, you know, you'll be at the side of the road and you'll have no power." But as I say there earlier, the thing is, because I record my tours on two cameras, I've got to keep devices charged anyway, even apart from the bike batteries. So I carry a power banks anyway. I'm well used to keeping devices charged. I don't think that's going to be a hazard. Anyway, hope you found the video useful. Do give it a like if you did. Give the channel a subscribe perhaps as well as other reviews of gear. Here you'll find my day-by-day cycling journeys, which have now covered the Irish coastline, the Irish inland waterways, the Scottish Highlands and Western Islands, and Orkney as well, and northern Spain. I did a loop from the Basque Country out to Santiago and then back along the coast and the Cantabrian Mountains. This year I'm probably heading back to the Pyrenees, doing both the French and the Spanish sides, and when I post those videos I include a link to my route maps on Cycle Travel, where you can download a GPX file yourself, so you can actually see what the road looked like and then copy it, and I tell you about where I stayed and where I ate and all that sort of thing. So if all that sounds good, do give the channel a like, and someday I hope I shall see you on the road.